crazy thing about the English language is there are an endless amount of verbs that are really advanced that you won't learn in a textbook, but English native speakers use all of the time. In this lesson, I've been keeping track of the verbs that I use almost on a daily or weekly basis that you can use in your English conversations, or you will need to understand for any sort of English learning or English television or English movies. Let's get started with the lesson right now. Anticipate. Anticipate. If you anticipate something, you expect that it will happen. A word that also means to anticipate something is to predict something. So in English, we often talk about the forecast or the predicted weather. You could say the weather forecast predicts that there will be rain this weekend. Augment. Augment. If you augment something, you increase it in size or in value. Let me tell you a really common example of how this is used. If a company is doing really well or a business is selling a lot of different products, they will need to augment their workforce to meet the needs of the business. This means they'll have to increase the amount of people working there. So if you augment something, you increase it. Balk. Balk. If you balk at something, it means you hesitate or you're unwilling to accept something in a situation. Let me give you an example. I once had a job where they said, we should all work overtime this week. We have a lot of work to do. So that means our work week would be over 40 hours, and everybody I worked with just balked at that. Nobody really wanted to work overtime. Let's take a moment to talk about how you can practice some of the verbs that I've taught you in the lesson so far. I'm proud to say that this video is sponsored by Italki. Italki is an online language learning platform with 150 languages available to learn, and the best part about Italki is you can have access to high-quality native-speaking English teachers. Through one-on-one lessons, you can improve your language skills, and you can just pay per lesson. You don't have to subscribe to anything, which is so convenient. I hate having to worry about subscriptions. When you want to start lessons on Italki, you can select a time that works best for you, and you can select a payment range so that you can find the best teacher for you in your budget. I know you guys will be able to find the perfect English teacher to meet your learning needs on the platform. And keep in mind, when you're searching for an English teacher, you can watch an introduction video for each teacher that will help you get to know them, and you can see if they're a good fit for you. And make sure to look at the types of lessons that each teacher has, their availability, and I know you guys will find the perfect English teacher to help you learn on Italki. Right now, there are over 7,000 English teachers on Italki, which is amazing. So go and find the teacher that meets your needs. If you sign up using my link and you're one of the first 50 users to sign up, or using the promo code Kayla, you will get $5 for free when you spend $10 on your first lesson on Italki. Again, I'm so proud to say that this lesson is sponsored by Italki. Now let's get back to learning some advanced English verbs. Coax. Coax. If you coax someone into doing something, you gently persuade them to do the thing. So almost every day I try to coax my children into eating their vegetables. So I'll give them lots of encouragement. I'll say, those are very healthy for you. They'll make your body feel good. They'll help you grow big and strong. I coax my children into eating their vegetables. This word is super common to say to persuade in spoken English. Coerce. Coerce. If you coerce someone to do something, you force them using strong threats or intimidation. It's much more harsh than coaxing someone into something. So again, going back to my example at my job, if my boss said, you guys are going to lose your jobs, I'm going to fire you if you don't work overtime, we would say that they coerced us into working overtime because we didn't want to, but we were basically threatened and intimidated that we were going to lose our jobs if we didn't work extra. What a terrible boss. Compel. Compel. So to compel means to force someone to do something, but this word is often used in the past tense. You can say, I felt compelled to donate to charity. This means I kind of felt forced, but we also use it to say that we just felt the need or we felt the urge, and it's not a bad urge or it's not a bad need, but we just felt like we really needed to do something for an important reason. In the United States, all of the citizens are compelled to pay taxes. That means we're forced to pay taxes by law. So to compel someone to do something means to require them or to force them to do it. A very official and advanced way to say that you agree with someone is to say that you concur. The verb concur means to agree. When we say that we concur with something, it means we share the same opinion. So lawmakers in the United States, the politicians, they often concur that we need to spend more money on education. They agree with that statement. To condone. Condone. So if you condone something, you accept or encourage behavior that is either illegal or it's just wrong. So you often hear people using this word in a negative way. So we say, I don't condone that. Like, I definitely do not condone you stealing from your workplace. That is very wrong and immoral. I tell my kids all of the time, I don't condone violence. That means I do not accept violence or I don't encourage it. This next word, to conflate, is often confused by native speakers. Native speakers think that the word conflate means the same as to confuse, but to conflate means to combine two things. Sometimes people conflate being famous with being rich, but the truth is you can be famous, you can have a lot of followers online, but you can still be very poor and not be making a lot of money. So don't conflate being famous, or especially internet famous, with being rich. That means don't combine those two things because they're not necessarily the same. To contend. Contend. To contend with someone means to compete with them or to argue with them. You can really use this word in two different ways to say either to compete or to argue. So in the Olympics, all of the different countries in the world contend with each other in sports. You can also say, hey, we don't have to contend with one another. That means we don't have to argue with one another or have a fight. Defer. Defer. If you defer something, you postpone or delay a decision or an action. Right now, since the economy is not doing very well in the United States, a lot of companies are deferring hiring new employees, which means they're delaying hiring new people to work for them because they're not sure if the economy is going to get worse or to get better. A lot of times you'll hear young people who get into universities and colleges, they will defer their acceptance. And that means they can use their acceptance for the next year, but they're just delaying it because they have something upcoming in the next year. Deliberate. Deliberate. To deliberate means to discuss or carefully consider making a decision. In the United States, anyone can be on a jury in a courtroom. That means you have to decide if the person is guilty or innocent. And the jury will often deliberate for many, many hours or even days to vote on if the person is guilty of committing a crime or if they are innocent. Oftentimes when there are sporting events that involve judges, like gymnastics, the judges will deliberate for just a minute before they give the score. That means they'll carefully consider everything and they'll discuss what the score is going to be. So if you need to just gather your thoughts and think about a decision very carefully, you could say, I just need a few minutes to deliberate. Derive. Derive. So to derive something means to obtain it from a particular source. Many English words like prince, joyful, and beef are derived from the French language. That means their origin is the French language. A lot of times you'll hear people in scientific conversations say, what is that derived from? Is that derived from the earth? That means do we get, that chemical or whatever it might be from the earth, or is it derived from a man-made source? Instead of saying, what does it come from? You can say, what is it derived from? And you'll sound very scientific and very intelligent. I love this next verb. It's so funny to use in conversation. If you are very confused or disoriented, you can say you are discombobulated. So the verb is actually discombobulate. If you discombobulate someone, you confuse them or, you disorient them. This verb is super common. It sounds super advanced, but it's used in a funny way just because the word sounds so funny. Whenever I go through an airport in the United States, you have to go through security and you have to take your shoes off and your belt off. And you have to gather all your bags once you get out of the security line. And I just feel so discombobulated. Like, where are all my things? Where am I going? It's very confusing and I feel disoriented. So that is the most common way to use this verb, discombobulate, or to say I was discombobulated. Disparage, disparage. So if you disparage someone, you belittle them or you criticize them. It's a horrible feeling if your boss ever disparages you in front of your coworkers. This word is often used in written English as well. If you say they disparaged them, it means, they kind of insulted them and made them feel bad. Elicit, elicit. If you elicit someone or something, you draw out a response or a reaction. Let me give you an example. When someone says, "What's wrong with you?" it does not elicit a response. Usually people are offended by that question. Now, if you say, "How are you doing today?" people usually elicit a response then. You get a reaction, "Oh, I'm good, thanks." You can also say, "This question didn't elicit a lot of enthusiasm." So you can draw out an emotion as well. Exacerbate. Exacerbate. If you exacerbate something, you make the situation worse. This is a very common verb. So if there is a food shortage, crops are not growing very well, and then there's a drought, the drought will exacerbate the food shortage. A drought is when it doesn't rain for a very long time. And of course, you cannot grow fruits and vegetables without water. If you have a foot injury, you might say, "I don't want to exacerbate my foot injury. I'm not going to walk very far right now." So if you exacerbate something, you make it worse. Expedite. Expedite. If you expedite something, you make it happen faster. In the United States, if you need to get a passport to travel outside of the country, it takes weeks and maybe even months to receive the passport after you apply and get your pictures submitted. Now, you can pay an extra fee and have the passport expedited. That means they speed up the process and they make it more quick. If someone asks you to expedite something, you will need to speed up your process. To flounder. Flounder. When someone flounders, it means they struggle or they act really awkward in a difficult situation. My first YouTube video, I go back and I look at it, and I was absolutely floundering. I was trying to read what I wanted to teach. I was trying to, make sure I was looking at the camera. I was acting so awkward. It's like I didn't know what I was doing. I was just floundering. And of course, I've been teaching English for a while, but not on camera. So I had to, really practice, and now I hopefully don't look like I'm floundering when I teach English on camera because I've been practicing for so long. So to flounder means to act awkward. Garner. Garner. To garner means to collect something, and we especially talk about collecting information or collecting support when we use the word garner. If you want to fix a problem, maybe you will make a petition and have many people sign it. And you could say this petition to save the turtles or whatever it might be garnered many signatures, or it garnered a lot of support. The phrase to garner support is really common as well. Inflict. Inflict. So if you inflict something upon someone, it means that you cause them to experience something very bad or unpleasant. And in the United States, in the state of Florida, if you're familiar with it, there are a lot of hurricanes there, and they inflict a lot of damage on the houses and the businesses that are in Florida. Lots of natural disasters inflict pain and suffering amongst people. So whatever it might be, a tsunami, an earthquake, they inflict a lot of damage. To innovate. Innovate. If you innovate, it means you make changes with new products or ideas, or especially technologies. People say that Steve Jobs was one of the most innovative people that ever lived. That means he had a lot of new ideas for new products, and he was always changing technology. If you call someone innovative, it means they are very creative at coming up with new things that are helpful. And this word, to innovate or innovative, it's really heavily associated with new technology. Lament. Lament. If you lament, it means you express a lot of sorrow or sadness or regret about something. Oftentimes, after a hurricane or another disaster, the news will interview people that have lived in that area, and they will lament about how painful it was to them. Or if you're lamenting about your husband or your wife, you're just kind of complaining about them, or maybe, they did something that made you very sad. So to lament means to talk about how sad or how regretful you are. If you don't know this next verb, you definitely want to pay attention. It's so common to use this verb in English. Manipulate. Manipulate. If you manipulate someone, you try to control what they do, and it's often in a very dishonest or in a bad way. If a politician or the president of a country starts spreading false information, they might be trying to manipulate all of the citizens or the public into believing something that's not true. So they're doing something in a dishonest way to convince people of their idea or their opinion. So it's generally very negative to manipulate someone into doing something. Meander. Meander. So this is a movement verb, and it means to follow an indirect or winding path. The way that we use this most commonly is if someone's kind of taking their time to get to where they need to go, or they're at a party and they're just kind of walking around. We'll say, oh, they're just meandering. That means they're walking really without a purpose. Mitigate. Mitigate. To mitigate something means to make it less severe or less intense. We often talk about mitigating damage. That means making the damage of something less, especially if it was our mistake or our action. Another really common phrase with this verb is to mitigate risk. That means to do everything in your power to mitigate or prevent something from going wrong. So lots of times in the United States, we will mitigate the risk of a fire by having smoke detectors and by having fire extinguishers available in all public buildings, so that if there is a small fire, we can put it out very quickly and mitigate the risk of it spreading throughout the whole building, doing lots of damage or even injuring people. Obliterate. Obliterate. This is a very dramatic verb that means to destroy something or erase it completely. So if there is a bomb and it explodes, it could obliterate an entire city block. That means destroy all of the buildings and create tons of damage. Omit. Omit. So if you omit something, you leave it out entirely. Many times when people write books about their families will say, could you please omit the embarrassing stories about me? That means, could you leave them out or exclude them? And of course, people love to tell embarrassing stories because they're so entertaining and they're so funny, but we would like those details to be omitted or just not told. Patronize. Patronize. So to patronize someone is to speak or act towards someone in a really condescending or rude way. Some people say patronize. I almost always say patronize. A really common way that an English learner in the United States might be patronized, or someone who's not from here, even if they do speak English, someone might be patronizing them and saying, hello, do you speak English? Can you understand me? That's very patronizing and rude. Of course, that's not the best way to approach someone, even if they do have lower language skills. But it's really insulting to people who just are not from the United States because they're like, yes, I understand you. Why are you talking to me like that? You could say, stop patronizing me. This means stop talking to me in that rude and condescending way. Stop talking to me like I'm stupid. Stop patronizing me. To perpetuate. Perpetuate. To perpetuate something means to continue or maintain it, and this is especially associated with negative behavior. A lot of people believe that the media and the news perpetuates really bad stereotypes about different groups of people because they report on the same things over and over again. So instead of perpetuating these bad stereotypes, people say, they should include stories that are good about different groups of people and not always negative news. You might hear someone say, don't perpetuate hate. This means don't encourage the hateful or bad behavior of people. Pursue. Pursue. If you pursue something, it means you're trying to obtain a goal or reach a goal over a long period of time. We can also say pursue to mean chase. So a lion might pursue a gazelle. That means they're trying to catch them and kill them. Now, more commonly, I use this word to say, I am pursuing a goal. That means I'm trying to do something. Right now, my goal on YouTube is to pursue 100,000 followers. And if you guys like and subscribe, that would mean so much to me. So thank you very much on helping me pursue or reach my goal. Reconcile. Reconcile. To reconcile means to agree on a problem or to solve an argument. So lots of times when people are thinking about getting divorced in their marriage, they might reconcile. That means maybe they'll do a lot of therapy and they'll start to agree and get along more, and they'll say, we actually reconciled. We're not going to get divorced anymore. That means they solved their problems and came to an agreement. To revel. Revel. If you revel, it means you enjoy yourself or you celebrate in a noisy or very rowdy way. If your favorite team wins the championship in football or in soccer, as we say in the United States, you will revel in their victory. A really common phrase using this verb is saying, don't revel in my pain. This means don't celebrate or act happy when I feel very sad. And it's used a bit sarcastically. Usually someone is not in physical or actual very harmful pain, but they're disappointed about something. And that same news might please someone else. So you can say, don't revel in my pain. This means don't celebrate when I'm feeling bad. Ruminate. Ruminate. To ruminate means to think very deeply or at length about something. So you're thinking about the same thing for a long time, and maybe you're ruminating about a decision that you have to make. You just keep kind of thinking about the same things over and over again. Usually if we say someone is ruminating, it means they're kind of going in circles. They're not really thinking productively, and we often use it when someone's taking way too long to make a decision. A lot of times people ruminate about very small details that don't actually matter. So maybe you'll be ruminating about what outfit you should wear, what clothes you should put on, when in reality it doesn't matter that much because other people won't notice as much as you think about your decision. You can say, don't ruminate. That means don't overthink something. Scoff. Scoff. To scoff means to behave or to speak in a very rude or dismissive way. Oftentimes people say if you're scoffing at something, you're kind of mocking it too. I literally think of someone scoffing being like, oh, like that's a scoff. We call that a scoff, that noise right there. When someone says their idea or what they want to do and you just go, oh, kind of roll your eyes, you're just being very dismissive and very mocking. When I was a public school teacher and I taught older kids, I try to do something fun with them. And sometimes, kids like to act like they're too old or too cool for something. So I'd say, all right, everybody, let's get up and let's stretch and let's do a dance to a song real quick. And the kids would be like, ugh. Like they'd scoff at my idea of trying to have fun because they were too embarrassed to do, a fun dance about learning or whatever it might be. Scrutinize. Scrutinize. To scrutinize something or someone means to closely examine it. Celebrities often feel like they're being scrutinized by just the public and the media and the tabloids, Everyone's looking at the small details of their life and commenting on them. And if someone's insulting you about very little things that, they shouldn't really make a big deal out of, you could say, "Why are you scrutinizing me? Go worry about something else." So generally, the word scrutinize is used in a negative way. If someone's scrutinizing another person, they're usually noticing negative things. Shun. Shun. To shun means to deliberately ignore someone or cast them out. So to shun someone means that you don't pay attention to them anymore, or you just don't even talk to them anymore. We don't use this in our casual life. Like, let's say we have a friend that we just don't see much anymore. Maybe we got in a fight with them. We wouldn't say, "I'm shunning them." That's a bit of a too official way to use this word in this context. It's too official for this context, is what I mean to say. But sometimes you'll see in the media or in the news, if a politician does something that's absolutely horrendous, maybe they cheat on their wife or they cheat on their husband, they have a scandal, the public might shun that person. And that's what the media might say. That means nobody's paying attention to them, nobody wants to talk to them anymore. Solicit. Solicit. To solicit means to ask or request something, often in a very aggressive way. In the United States, it's super common to see on people's houses on the front door a sign that says, "No solicitors." It used to be very common to try to, ring someone's doorbell and try to sell them things like, magazines and vacuums and whatever it might be. And people do not appreciate someone coming to their home and trying to sell things here, because people would just be too aggressive about it. So the sign "No solicitors" means no selling things, no asking for things at my house. You don't necessarily have to use this verb solicit in a negative way. You could say that a charity was trying to solicit donations. That means they're trying to request them, At the grocery stores in the United States, I've mentioned before, when you check out, when you pay for your groceries, they'll say, "Hey, would you like to donate 10 cents to this charity?" Or "Would you like to round up your total to donate the money to charity?" And this is soliciting a donation. You're kind of requesting it. And some people don't like this. They like to donate to charity on their own. They don't like to be asked repeatedly. So it could be a negative thing. Stall. Stall. To stall means to delay progress or to delay an action. If you're trying to negotiate a contract and nobody can agree on the terms of the contract will just stall. Nothing will happen. There will be no progress. If you need someone to create more time for you, maybe you're about to give a presentation, but the computer's not working and everybody's waiting for you, you might say, "Hey, could you just go talk to everyone and stall for 5 minutes?" That means just kind of, give me a little bit of time. I need you to delay my presentation. So it's really common to say, "Can you stall?" or "Can you stall for 5 minutes?" or "Can you stall for 10 minutes?" This means, can you delay? Sustain. Sustain. To sustain something means to maintain it or to support it over time. I am a runner. I love to run when the weather is nice out, especially. And when I run in a race, I try to sustain the same speed for the entire race, which you have to practice, because if you run too fast at the beginning, you will not be able to sustain your speed because you'll get too tired. So we call that pacing in running, when you're trying to sustain the same speed throughout the entire race or throughout your entire run. Another example of this verb, to sustain, is when we talk about companies growing their business, or they're selling lots of products. They're trying to sustain their growth, which means they're trying to keep growing. If something cannot be sustained, of course we add the prefix un and we say it's unsustainable, which means we cannot keep up the same pace or the same growth over a long period of time, because it's just too much work or it's too impossible. To taint. Taint. So if you taint something, you pollute it, or you add something so it's not so pure, it's not so good. So a very common phrase that uses the verb taint is to say, my reputation was tainted. That means that someone said something about me that was bad, and so my reputation, or the way that people think about me, is now ruined. People think I'm bad. You can also use the verb to taint in a more literal sense. Let's say the water is tainted in an area. That means a chemical or some sort of poison has been added to the water, so it's not pure anymore and it can't be drank. Terminate. Terminate. To terminate means to bring something to an end or to end something. So of course, the famous Arnold Schwarzenegger movie is called The Terminator. So the Terminator is like a scary term for, the killer or the ender. And this is a cognate if you're a Spanish speaker for terminar, which means to finish. But I will say to terminate in English is a very official term. Oftentimes, if you work for a company and someone is getting fired or they're losing their job, we'll say they're getting terminated. This would be the official way to say they're getting fired. Undermine. Undermine. To undermine something means to weaken it, and it often becomes less effective. Two really common ways that we use this verb is we say, you are undermining someone's authority or their power, which means they're in charge, but maybe you're making fun of them, or you're saying, oh, they're not the boss. You're undermining their power or their authority. Or we say you can undermine someone's credibility, so their respect. So when you're saying bad things about someone, you're undermining them. Unveil. Unveil. To unveil means to reveal or make public something that was before a secret. Oftentimes, when the company Apple has a new iPhone that's going to come out, they keep it a secret and then they have a big ceremony or a big presentation to unveil or reveal the new iPhone. So they show all the new features. So this word, to unveil, is often used with products or with big secrets. Validate. Validate. To validate means to prove that something is true or valid. Sometimes we say, I feel validated. That means all of the feelings that I had about something, I might have been doubting myself, but someone else agreed with these things, or they shared something with everyone else, and now everyone understands what I was saying. I feel validated, or I feel true. So it's kind of a feeling that you can have. Another way that validate is used very commonly in the United States is when you have to go to a business, maybe you have to buy something, or maybe you're going to eat at a restaurant, you need to park there. And in busy cities or in busy areas of the United States, you will often have to pay for parking. Now, if you visit the business and they do what is called to validate your parking, that means they give you, a coupon, or they give you something that marks that you don't have to pay for parking since you use the business there and they cover the cost. So that's another way that validate is used. So they verify, or they show that it's true that you actually visited the business, therefore you don't have to pay for parking. To verbalize. Verbalize. If you verbalize something, you express or you say something in words. You say how you feel. Oftentimes when you're very overwhelmed, there's a lot going on, or you're very sad, or you're very happy, it's hard to verbalize how you feel. That means it's hard to say exactly how you feel because you have so many different emotions. That is probably the most common way that I hear this verb to verbalize used. To vouch. Vouch. If you vouch for someone or something, you say that it is credible. You say the person is credible or reliable. Oftentimes, if you are working at a company and there is a job opening and you know someone in your personal life that would be good for the job, you will vouch for them. That means you say that they are a really good employee, they will be really reliable if they're hired. So basically, you put your reputation on the line, or your reputation, is in question. If they're a good worker, then, your boss will be like, great, thanks for the great worker that we hired. But if you say that someone is a good worker and they show up and they're late all the time and they're not very good at the job, you'll kind of regret that you vouched for them because now your credibility might be ruined as well. Wane. Wane. Wane can be a name, but wane, W-A-N-E, is a verb that means to decrease in either popularity or support over time. So oftentimes if you choose a new hobby, you might be really excited about it at first, but maybe your enthusiasm wanes over time. That means it decreases over time because you realize the hobby isn't as fun as you thought it was at first. REAK. REAK. So this verb, REAK, is spelled W-R-E-A-K. This means to cause. To wreak is usually used in a negative way. Again, talking about natural disasters like hurricanes, big rainstorms, tsunamis, earthquakes, whatever it is, they wreak havoc, or they wreak danger, or they wreak damage. They're very bad, so they just cause a lot of bad things to happen. This is how the verb wreak is used. And the most common expression with this verb is to wreak havoc, which means chaos and damage. And we don't really use havoc in another way besides in this expression. So this verb and this word havoc, they go hand in hand. They go right together. Thank you guys so much for checking these 50 advanced English verbs out. I hope that you start to notice a lot of these verbs in your daily conversations, in your reading, and watching movies, and just whatever English you might be intaking. These verbs will really help you out to sound more intelligent and just to increase your vocabulary. If you guys made it through all 50, make sure you try out italki. Thanks again to them for sponsoring this video. If you're one of the first 50 people to use my link or the code Kayla, then you'll get some money off your first lessons as well. Thanks again for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.